And to dive into Oregon's performance last week against the Vandals from Moscow and now against the Broncos from Boise, we welcome in Justin Hopkins from Scoop Duck as a part of the On3 network. And Justin, when I really start to dive into the last 2 weeks, right, against these Idaho schools for the Oregon Ducks. Let's go back to last week. And of course, everybody's talking about maybe the struggle that they had. You look at the scoreboard at the end of the game, and it certainly wasn't what people were anticipating, of course, coming into this matchup against FCS Idaho, 7th ranked FCS Idaho, by the way, when we talk about that. But when we're coming out of that game, we're talking about the offensive line, right? This was considered one of the better offensive lines in the Big Ten Conference. And you saw an Idaho team that was able to go toe-to-toe up front. Maybe the run game didn't get going as much as Dan Lanning would like it to in that particular matchup. What, from your eyes, what do you think was the main issue? Like, what was kind of your evaluation of why what happened on Saturday against Idaho?
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. I kind of feel like the team sleepwalked a little bit, right?
Yep.
One of the folks in our Twitter world, in the Oregon Twitter world, kind of tweeted about Varsity Blues, right? And they walk out the next morning, they're all hungover. That's kind of what the team looked like. So, and here's to kind of take it a step further. If you go back and you look at the game, you know, you could see that Dan Lanning had a very limited game plan, which you would expect, right? They weren't going to open up the playbook. They kind of figured they'd be able to beat Idaho. They still beat them. The starting linebackers for Oregon played virtually 0 snaps, right? I think the team kind of picked up on some of these things. There was a heavy rotation as soon as the game started of the 2 deep unit on defense almost the entire game. So I think Oregon felt like, hey, look, we should be able to cruise through this game. And I feel like the team kind of picked up on some of that, which is not what you want, right? Dan Lanning obviously ripped them a new one after the game. But to take it a step further, I'm not going to sit here and discredit anything Idaho did because they played really sound football. Their defense returned basically everybody from last year except for like 2 guys that didn't start. And those 2 guys were transfers, guys who'd played a lot of football. They played really good, sound, fundamental, frustrating football, right? And, I think you take a look at that, and that's, if I was Coach Eck from Idaho, like, hey, let's just try to keep this game in reach. Let's not let it get 40-0 in the second quarter and not have a chance. Let's get this thing to halftime and maybe see that we still have a shot here. And I think he did that. Oregon shot themselves in the foot with a ton of turnovers, right? I mean, turnovers in the red zone. I think 6 of the 7 penalties were on the offensive line. So it was just that game, right? And so, now, of course, and I know we'll talk more, is that game, a reflection of what this team will be moving forward, or is it an anomaly? So I guess we'll find out this week.
So let's talk about this week a little bit, right? You got one win over an Idaho school, looking to become the Idaho State Champs by beating Boise State, a team, I know this stat has been thrown around ad nauseum all week, the team that Oregon has never beaten in their history. And when you look at this Boise State team, Ashton Jeanty, of course, one of the best running backs in all of college football. You talk about the linebackers that didn't play in that first game, right? That group needs to be good to be able to really be impressive here over against this Boise State team. What kind of a test is that not only this Boise State run game, but really this Boise State team as a whole for the Ducks this Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, again, kind of like Idaho, they're another sound football team, right? Jeanty is a rare breed. That's a dude. That's an NFL guy. Dan Lanning's even, noted that, said this is an early NFL round guy. What did he have? 6 touchdowns, I believe, last week in the opener for them. It was Georgia Southern. So, we'll see if the step up in competition is going to be a little tougher for them. But yeah, Oregon's going to have their hands full. The bright spot, if we're going to take away from what was a very average or below average performance against Idaho, was the run defense for Oregon was phenomenal. And again, that was Idaho. They didn't have a Jeanty back there. Totally get that. But I believe Idaho was under 60 yards rushing for the game. They just never got going on the ground. So I don't believe Oregon will keep Boise State under 60 yards. But my belief is this. For Boise State, the engine for them offensively is getting Jeanty going, right? I think, quarterback play is okay. Their passing game is okay. But if they can keep moving the ball, set up, second and third and short, get themselves in those situations, it's going to keep their offense going. So if you're Oregon's defense, you want to limit that. You really want to try and do your best to stymie that and basically put the ball in Maddox's hands and say, hey, you beat us with your arm, we're going to take our chances here. So I think that's the game within the game there for Oregon defensively. Genty's a dude. And again, I think their whole offense gets going when they can get 4 yards, 5 yards, maybe 6 yards on first down, and give themselves those second and third and shorts to kind of keep their offense going.
So we talked about the offensive line before and that struggles, and you look at Genty on the offensive side of the ball. They've got a pretty good player coming off the edge. Boise State does in Ahmed Hassanin coming off there as well. How do you expect Oregon's offensive line to fare with him and really this entire defensive front for the Broncos? Do you expect improvement certainly this week?
That's the key for me, right? I think the offensive line, we'll call it poor. They performed very poorly in the first game. Let's call a spade a spade. They returned almost everybody from last year, mixed and matched a couple things, had an injury to Bedford, who was a starter last year. He probably will play this weekend, but he's certainly not going to start. I think that's a guy you want to get him out there maybe for a few reps and knock the rust off. Should be able to be fine without him. So assuming we don't see him much and pretty much the same offensive line as last week, I just want to see improvement, right? I'm not looking for this to all of a sudden become a stalwart and them not to make any mistakes. They had a really bad week 1. I just want them to have a better week 2, right? And it wouldn't take much. Even if you just eliminated the penalties from what they committed in week 1, it would be a better performance. What I'm really looking at, and I love that you bring it up, Boise State's got an elite edge there. He's going to come off and create all kinds of pressure, and Idaho was able to sack Dylan Gabriel 3 times, which, frankly, we didn't have 3 sacks last year with Bo Nix in the entire year, so kind of a new thing for Oregon fans this year. Johnny Cornelius and Josh Connerly are both NFL caliber guys. Cornelius is probably an early NFL guy from most projections. So, Oregon's going to have their hands full. I'm sure they'll move him around. Keep in mind, Dylan Gabriel's left-handed, so that does change things a little bit. I'm sure Boise State will mix up some things because of that as well. So, yeah, that's a matchup. I said this on my message boards. The Oregon offensive line isn't going to go from poor to stellar in 1 week. Can they just take a step forward? And then you've got Oregon State in 2 weeks. Can you take another step towards them and another game you should likely win? And hopefully when you enter conference play with UCLA in 3 weeks, you're clicking a little bit better.
I mean, you talk about this pass rush. It'll be interesting because you've got Michigan later on in the season, really good pass rushers. Ohio State later on the season, really good pass rushers. So you mentioned improvement. Just got to see that incremental improvement against Boise State. Justin Hopkins, Scoop Duck, on 3. Check out his coverage over there. Justin, thanks for joining me here today.
No problem.
Thanks for watching Big Ten TED, where it's all Big Ten all year long. Make sure to like the video to spread the word of Big Ten TED to the masses, and subscribe to the channel for updates on Big Ten content that drops every day.